Maybe you have family members, maybe you have friends, maybe you have the toxic guy in your life that's making your life feel like hell. Ultimately, you're trying to figure out, how do I actually get free? How do I actually liberate myself from this relationship, this interaction? How do I actually get rid of the toxic people in my life? Because it seems like they're everywhere. Well, first off, the thing we need to address is, if they're everywhere, then there might be something that has not been healed yet that makes you comfortable being with all of them. Now that you're coming to awareness, now you're starting to see there's a lot more toxic people in your life. So we need to get you plugged into people that are actually engaged in positivity, and not just fluffy frou-frou positivity, but people that are actually doing the work, dealing with the shit inside so that they can actually heal, grow, and develop who they're actually called to be. That's a piece of people that I work with, people that are go-getters, that actually want the healing and they're willing to put in the effort and the intentionality, because we provide a path and a plan. If you want to know more about that, go to rawmotivations.com. All right, that's the plug. Move it out of the way. Now we get to the actual meat and potatoes. When we're dealing with this piece then of removing toxic people from your life, it can get very, very tricky. And the reason why, first off, it gets a little tricky is simply because of you. And when I say because of you, I mean because of the amount of love and care that you have for this other person. You might not respect them. You might not view them on a level of saying, hey, this is a healthy relationship, but you care. That is not a bad thing. You just shutting off the caring meter would just make you more narcissistic. But you actually caring is one of your superpowers, and you need to acknowledge that first and foremost. Inside of this piece of caring, it oftentimes will leave you stuck for such a long period of time because you don't want to leave. You're like, maybe he's going to change. Maybe he's going to get better. All of this goes back through the strain of addiction. It goes back through the strain of having a trauma bond, of falling in love with your abuser, falling in love with your captor, falling in love with this person, and still having it where you keep justifying the abuse that's happening. This is why everything that we do here, we focus on what are the facts. We don't care about your perspective. We don't care about his perspective, because that ultimately will be skewed by so many different things. But simply the facts of, let's look at the abuse. Is it abusive? Yes. Okay, then we need to leave. Is it abusive? Yes, then we need to establish boundaries. Is it abusive? Yes, then we need to grow you, your confidence, your certainty, because otherwise you won't stand up for you, and you'll continue to let him roll over you over and over, and all you become is just a speed bump in his life that he keeps going over every single day. So this piece of leaving a toxic person can be very, very hard because you care. You love him. Maybe the toxic person is your family members. You love them, right? Like, there's a piece of growing up, interacting with the mom, the dad, the brothers, the sisters, the siblings that you had in your life. You love and you care for them. So you going to a place of saying, I'm going to cut them off, just feels awful. It feels like you shouldn't have to. It feels like it shouldn't be a thing. It feels like you can't. I want to let you know right here and right now, you have permission to do so. Some of you are simply just waiting for that. Waiting for permission to be able to say, I can actually go no contact with my parents. I can go no contact with my siblings. I can actually take them out of my life. Yeah, you can. Because no matter if they're blood or not, it doesn't matter. Abuse is abuse. Like, the toxic guy that you've been with, that's abuse. So it doesn't mean you have to stay with him when he keeps hitting you every single day. Doesn't mean you have to keep staying with him and keeps cheating on you every single day. Same exact thing when we're dealing with another toxic person. The mental, the emotional abuse that oftentimes happens from them doesn't mean that you need to stay because, oh, well, they're family. No. There's too many people that stay in toxic relationships because of family, because of blood, because of kids that are involved. And all it does is further deplete you. Further destroy you, further take away who you actually are. Toxic people need to be cut out of your life, no question about it, but doing so can be extremely difficult. So understanding, first off, that it's normal for you to care, and it's normal for you to not want to cut them off, but then you have to move to a place of establishing boundaries. If you do not have boundaries in your life, then you cannot expect any different results. And at that point, you're starting to get the results that you are creating. And what I mean by that is, if you're living life with no boundaries and no standards or morals that you're upholding for you, you kind of can't complain about the shit that's happening to you. I get it, unawareness, yes, but when you're aware, these boundaries have to happen, and you have to be able to hold them. Now, when we talk about narcissism and toxic people in your life, the toxic guy, the toxic family member, Holding a boundary is extremely difficult because you normally are putting it on them and expecting them to perform at a certain level. That's not going to happen. You're wasting your time, your energy, your focus trying to get them to do something that they're not going to do. Instead, the boundary has to be around you, about your values, your standards, what you are willing to do or not to do. For instance, you could be willing to stay in a relationship for all of the reasons except for him cheating, which is why he'll never admit to cheating even if he's doing it, because he knows that's the one thing that you'll actually leave. Until he breaks you down long enough and he knows at that point you won't even leave. You might have a boundary that says, hey, I want to live in integrity and I want to have a faithful relationship. So what that means is not you telling the toxic guy in your life, don't cheat on me. Don't do this. Why? Because that's trying to control him. Instead, tell him what you're willing to allow. I'm not willing to be in a relationship with this person that cheats. You didn't tell me he couldn't cheat. You just said what you were going to do. This is what boundaries are about. People get this all confused and all skewed up. They focus on boundaries being rules and regulation, limits on the other person. A boundary is for you. That's it. Because the boundary is supposed to work for everyone. For your kids, for your family, for healthy people, for toxic people. Boundaries are for you, not for anyone else. They're not you putting rules and regulations and limits on other people. It's you just saying, hey, I choose to be in a faithful relationship. If you choose not to be faithful in this relationship, see ya. Do you see the difference? The difference is you're not telling the other person to not cheat. If you want to go cheat, go ahead and go cheat. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be with me because I'm choosing to be in a relationship that has someone who is faithful in it. And if that's not you, I guess it's not you and I'll just move on. Now, I realize in saying that, some of you are like, oh, I could never say something like that. And I get it because you're not at a place of confidence and certainty that you could say this. But I know many women that have been at this place because they worked with us and they saw when we built up their confidence, their clarity, and their certainty, they called out the toxic guy that's in their life. They said things that they never thought that they would ever be able to say simply because they no longer subscribed to his shit. They no longer said, oh, this is okay for me to be used and abused. They no longer degraded their worth and their value and said, oh, I lose the self-respect for myself and I give it all to him. They no longer had these issues because they've grown and they learned how to be able to step into certainty of who they are and of who they're called to be. And so when a person does this, it starts to enable you to grow and develop more than anything else. And it makes removing a toxic person much easier. Because you're not looking to him or other people for validation, for your worth, for being to be justified if you're good enough or not good enough. You're simply holding a standard, holding an accountability, holding a boundary that says, hey, this is what I believe. Now, when you're in a toxic relationship or you're dealing with the toxic family member and you're trying to figure out how do I remove the toxic people, it's simple. Like with this, it comes down to if you set a boundary and they do not listen and they do not respect you inside of the boundary that you put up for you, then you have to make a different decision for you. This might mean going no contact. This might mean having a buffer. This might mean communicating through a different person. This might mean saying, hey, we're no longer going to talk on the phone because I hate it when you yell at me, but if you want to text me, that's okay. You establishing buffers, you establishing steps, helping you actually move forward in your healing process. If you don't do this, you will continue to get stuck in the toxic relationship. You will continue to get stuck with this person over and over and over again. So all of this piece of removing toxic people from your life, it doesn't come with a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 step. It comes from you. Healing and growing and developing you. Because if I gave you steps 1 through 5, 90% of you wouldn't even be able to do them because you don't have the confidence in who you actually are. You don't have the confidence to be able to set a boundary and hold it. Because so many times that you've said it, it's gotten blown through, it's gotten broken down, and you've just been left more abused and more used, and you think, well, what was the point of that? I'm not going to set a boundary anymore because that sucks. If we do not help you heal internally to have the fortitude to handle the storm that you're going to have to walk through, then all of the tips in the world will not make a difference. This is a problem with a lot of content out there, is some of it is teaching you strategies and ideas and concepts and things, and that's great. But I know many people that know all the strategies, all the concepts, and know everything about narcissism, and they're still stuck, they're still trapped, they still cycle, they still go back to the toxic guy over and over and over again, because just knowledge and strategies won't fix shit. But in here, you having the confidence, you having the certainty, you getting clarity every single day about who you are and the direction you're called to be and the boundaries you need to place, and realizing that no matter what he does, you can stay centered and you can stay growing and developing yourself no matter what storm he throws at you. That is power. That is strength. That is you stepping up as a beacon of light for yourself, for your kids, for friends, for family. And this means you will have the capability of removing toxic people from your life, because you realize it's no longer about your validation from this person, how they perceive you, the people-pleasing side, the codependency side. It's no longer about that. It's about your growth, your healing, and you protecting you. When you're in toxic relationships and everything's about the toxic person, it's like what they talk about in an airplane. We're like, hey, if the cabin pressure loses pressure, then these masks are going to drop down, put them on your face. If you have kids, make sure you put them on yourself first and then put them on the kids, right? When you're in the toxic relationship, you're the one going around putting oxygen on everyone while you're dying. My hope is enough of you see this and wake up, so that you realize that you're the one suffocating. And if you don't actually reach out, this will eat you alive. Removing the toxic person from your life, toxic family members, is not about giving you a list of checklists of things to do. It's about you reconnecting and understanding from a soul level that if you don't heal and change the trajectory of your life, none of that matters.